Gary, why don't you do a bit on styrofoam?
Like what?
Well, what is all this stuff? Why do we need this stuff? And why do they make them so small?
Eric, did you just take a crap on my desk?
What's up? What's up? Crapped on your desk, Doug. What's up with that?
Dude, I'm dying. Luke, I am your father.
Aw, I've interrupted happy time. Look, your father wants you to check out the delay problems we're having at the loading dock. Now I know you'd love to just sit there and keep being not slim, but we gotta work a little today, okay?
That was from Star Wars. Everyone in McKinney is dead.
Leela, I think you're missing the big picture. When you were a kid, what was your biggest fantasy?
To have parents.
Whatever. The correct answer is to be a superhero. We have superpowers, and we're Americans. This is our chance.
Huh? Crap, I dozed off. Hey, Kumatani, when's our cue?
Just stay asleep till you die.
Welcome to Winning Time Tapes. Today will be the first episode in a series called PinDown, where I look back with some guests about either cool moments in wrestling or fun basketball stories. Today, I have Grink.
Hello.
And today we'll be discussing the 2010 Boston Celtics. But before we do that, we're going to talk about a little bit of the current Celtics as we're approaching the finals against the Dallas Mavericks. Initial thoughts on the Celtics run so far?
Well, the important thing to do with any run is explain why it's Mickey Mouse. And luckily for us, it's not hard to explain why this Celtics run is Mickey Mouse as fuck. Basically, there were no good players in the Eastern Conference the whole time.
And for people who want to say that's too much hater talk, or you could say every year is Mickey Mouse, I actually have done some research, and I guess I'll do this now, is I've gone back since the merger, and I've looked back at every title run to see what, only injury-based. There's nothing going to be here about, like, a random 7th seed made it to the conference finals, like what happened in 87 with the Supersonics when Dale Ellis went on fire. Purely based on injuries. And for the first 12 years, there is nothing much to be said in terms of injuries. And it only stays consistently, something can be brought up since about 2009 on. But if you allow me to quickly rattle off.
Sure, but, rattle off, and then I want to bring something up about that discrepancy there with when the injuries happened.
All right. So first thing, 89 Detroit Pistons. Terry Cummings, who was an all-NBA teamer at the time, and Magic Johnson, both injured.
Okay.
89, first instance. 99, Patrick Ewing, but we invented Ewing theory because they said the team got better.
That might not even count.
2000, Tim Duncan was injured for the first Lakers title.
I don't think Duncan's stopping that team, probably. Maybe.
2003, the Spurs didn't have to see Chris Webber or Dirk for injuries.
That's huge.
And then 2006, the Suns didn't have Amari Stoudemire. And then that's it. So that's like, for the first 30 years since merger, that's all that happened.
Yeah, and a lot of that sounds like 99 on,
So then, 2009, the Lakers didn't have to see Manu Ginobili, Kevin Garnett, or Tracy McGrady, all because of injuries at the time. And especially with Tracy McGrady, that was a 7-game series they had with the Rockets, where Tracy was unavailable. In 2012, Derrick Rose got injured, and so was Joakim Noah and Dwight Howard to make the Heat's paths easier. 2013, No Rondo, Bryant, or Westbrook. 14's fine. So those Spurs live on.
The beautiful game.
2015, the Warriors in the finals didn't have to see Kyrie or Kevin Love. 2016, we had the Draymond suspension, which kept him out of games. And there were other little suspension stuff, but not as significant as Draymond's there. As well as in the West, there was no Marc Gasol, Conley, or Lob City's Chris Paul or Blake Griffin.
Wow.
2017 Warriors. No Blake Griffin, Isaiah Thomas during that one MVP type season, or Kawhi Leonard, as we all know, of Zaza Pachulia. 2018, the Warriors, again, get out of the Game 7 due to Chris Paul being injured. In 2019, no Klay Thompson or Kevin Durant. Now we're getting to more closer modern age. The bubble season, there was no Durant or Irving for the Nets. Ben Simmons, who was good at the time, was out. No Giannis as well for 2020. For the Bucks run in 21, no Jaylen Brown, Anthony Davis, Kyrie Irving, Jamal Murray, or Kawhi Leonard. For the 23 Nuggets last year, no Giannis, no John Morant, no Kawhi, no Paul George, no Chris Paul. But then, here we are at the Boston Celtics of this year. Star-level players missing. Halliburton, Mitchell, Jimmy Butler, Zion Williamson, Kawhi Leonard, Giannis, Damian Lillard, Jalen Brunson, Julius Randle, and other role players, all because of injuries.
Yeah, I mean, this year, it's mostly just about the fact that their path involved every team they faced missing their best or second best player. It's really something. Here's the thing, though. They'd be here either way. I'm very confident in that. They were far and away the best team in the East. It doesn't matter really all that much. I think that there are other cases, like if the Celtics win this title, it's going to feel like less of a fluke than other titles, even in recent history. Also, I wanted to bring up, why do players get injured more now? Are they soft?
I wouldn't say soft, but I think part of it might be the way players are developed. They're more athletic now, so I think they're more succumb to injury because I think the game, not necessarily always faster pace, but I feel like even the bigs are more athletic, so you don't see plodding, roaming bigs, and I think there's a more physicality now than, what people in the 90s said there were. In terms of just
physicality, in terms of the stress that the players are putting on their own bodies.
Yeah, and the demand.
Not hand checking. You don't get injured from hand checking.
Right. Also, it could be the fact that more players now have to play a more harder schedule when they're younger, with the AAU stuff.
Yeah, I was going to bring up that too. There was that big, amazing article that came out a while back now where it looked at, a lot of kids are playing 2 games a day for a long time, year-round practices, and even if, let alone the playing time in general, but also just the specialization. He argued that kids who were multidisciplined, athletes, they're less likely to get injured because they work out muscles in a certain way to where unnatural movements that are caused by random things happening in basketball, you're going to be more used to that if you played a bunch of soccer as well. But this is straying off. This is off tangent time. I want to talk about this year's Celtics in terms of how they're seen in the media and on Twitter.
Yeah.
They're boring, and I'm using scare quotes. We've talked about this before. Do you want to get into what are some of the common narratives surrounding the Celtics?
I feel like I see a lot of people's number one complaint about Jason Tatum is attack the basket more. And then I feel like a lot of Celtic fans in general get the most frustrated when possessions look like the other 4 stand around and then Jason Tatum takes a fadeaway shot.
Yeah. But that doesn't happen so much. That possession you just described, it looks really bad when it does, but they just take a ton of catch and shoot threes. They shoot so many more threes than any other team in the NBA. It's relentless. You think about the Warriors teams that were built around Steph and Clay, two of maybe the two best three-point shooters of all time. They didn't take nearly as many threes as this Celtics team does.
Mm.
It's a barrage. And so they'll miss 4 threes in a row. And then they'll make 4 threes in a row, and then the game's over. Or like they'll go on a stretch where they make like 7 out of 15 threes in like a 8-minute stretch, and just now you're down 30. Now it doesn't matter if they're bad in the clutch. There is no clutch. That's the argument for them. I think in this final series is that on paper they are so much better than the Mavs. That even if Luka and Kyrie have the late game, close quarters advantage, they're not going to have the opportunity to show that off because the Celtics are going to beat them down in the first 3 quarters to the point where it doesn't matter.
I think for me, one people have been during this playoff surprised on how good the Dallas defense can look, which again, because of that point, the Dallas defense is not going to look as good as it has been during this Boston final.
Yeah, because I feel like a lot of the kind of surprising aspects of the Dallas defense have actually come from their 2 offensive stars.
Yeah.
People have been generally praising, for good reason, especially on Kyrie's part. Kyrie's been so active, so cognizant. Luka's been able to use his size on defense because, the refs are definitely letting them play, which is a good thing. And so I feel like the way the Celtics kind of kill you with everybody on the court being able to shoot from 3 and finish around the rim, it's just going to neutralize some of the stuff that Dallas, like the ways in which the Dallas defense is surprisingly good. Those aren't the things that are going to make them a good defense against the Celtics. It's going to be a more traditional method, funneling it into Lively
and Gafford.
Gafford, I don't think, provides nearly as much rim protection, but you're going to have to hope that he at least doesn't get killed. What's nice for Gafford is that Porzingis is not terrible for him, but they get Porzingis back, which is another thing to talk about. They haven't had Porzingis in a while. He's going to have a lot of revenge narratives. Kyrie, Boston, Porzingis, Dallas. I don't think it'll be a very interesting series.
I would say Boston in 6, just because I think Kyrie and Luka are going to take one of game 1 or 2, but I think Boston is also going to take one of game 3 or 4 in Dallas, and then 5 and 6 are both going to go Boston.
I will predict Boston in a sweep.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
this team is going to go down in history as one of the most underrated great teams of all time.
Underrated because of, as you mentioned, kind of the Twitter narrative that it's been boring.
Yeah.
And just, there's been no adversity, as in, like, they haven't faced any stars. And plus, even with it, they're just so, like, overpowering with the 3-pointers and with, like, 5 fringe all-stars, at least, players in their starting lineup.
They have 5 I'm confident enough in Derek White and Porzingis, especially, to say that they have 5 all-stars playing for them right now.
Right. So, this whole boring thing is, interesting for a really good Boston team, because now we're going to look at a different really good Boston team.
And one of the least boring teams, I think, in modern NBA history. The 2010 Celtics.
Right. So, would you like to want to go down this player by player, or just kind of like let's set up going into the 09-10 season?
Let's set up going into the season, and then we'll introduce each player and talk about them a little bit.
All right. Well, they're coming off of 08 they won, and then 09 they had no Kevin Garnett.
Yes, and in 2010, with Garnett's health in question, they make what was seen at the time to be a very strong and logical trade for Rasheed Wallace. That was, I think, their main acquisition that offseason. And he instantly slotted in as their 6th man. And the team was old, but the team had a lot of continuity, obviously. Those 4 main guys in Doc. They were proven championship players, obviously. They had won it 2 years earlier. And it did feel like last year was a huge missed opportunity, and that they we're a championship level team were Garnett to have been healthy.
Do you think at this time, because I know it was more true in 11 and 12, where Allen even takes a more diminished role, do you think we start seeing that in 10 in terms of like the offense being more initiated by Rondo and thus more touches went to primarily Pierce at the time? Or do you think Ray Allen, just as the, kick out guy to catch and shoot, was always been the case since he's gotten to Boston?
Well, if you look at his per 36 numbers, in terms of shot attempts, he's going down from 13.5 the championship year to 13 the next year, and that's without Kevin Garnett, and then to 12.5 in the year we're talking about, 2010. And I think that, as you mentioned, I think that's a reflection, and it's only one shot.
Yeah.
It's a reflection of Rondo's expanded role on offense. Mm-hmm. Rondo was seen by some to be their strongest player this year overall. And he, while never a good shooter, was crafty, could get to the rim. And so Ray Allen, I think his role stayed very consistent throughout his time with the Celtics, but just with every passing year, and the same goes for Pierce, their driving ability is going to be that much a little bit worse.
Yeah. So, let's look. What was crazy about, maybe to my knowledge, when I think about this Boston team from 2010, I would assume the least craziest was Ray Allen.
Publicly, yes. He was a professional. He didn't really leak too much to the press, but after the fact, we now know that, or at least we have a lot of substantiated evidence that he was maybe least satisfied. And this might be because of the diminished role, but also I think this was a dispute with the front office and personality clashes, because Rondo was a Garnett disciple, a psycho with photographic memory. Garnett, it goes without saying, one of the most intense, just brutally mean trash talkers in the history of the game. And Paul Pierce had his proclivities.
The best wing shooter of all time. Ooh. Right now, it's Ray Allen, but it will be Steph.
It will?
It will be Steph.
He's not a wing, though.
Wait.
What is Steph?
He's a point guard.
He's a wing guy.
What?
Yeah.
We've seen him wild out off the court. I think that carried over into the locker room a bit. But Ray Allen was not invited to the reunion hosted by Rondo for the 2018. He was not present at Paul Pierce's jersey retirement for the Celtics. And he was always contentious throughout this year with management because of the contract situation. Mm-hmm. He was generally always kind of pissed off. And I think that he did not fit in as well to this locker room filled with like deviants and like attack dogs and veterans that were never always wanted more minutes. And he's sitting here like, I've sacrificed so much, like the least he could do is let me maintain what I've already carved out for myself. If you read like the blogs surrounding this time, everybody talks about all these sacrifices these players are making and how egalitarian the basketball is. Nobody on this team scores more than 18.5 points per game. Mm-hmm. You will never see that on a good team ever again.
Yeah.
Even adjusted for pace, you'll never see it. Like per 100 possessions, that won't ever happen again.
I think I could look at it real quick, but I want to say the only team that it would make sense to assume that maybe that happened again was the 2014 Spurs.
Yes, that's true.
But going to what other people sacrifice, there's going to be a lot of juicy stuff at the top of the lineup. You mentioned that core of Rondo, Garnett, Pierce, but after Wallace, what are other kind of just insane things that would happen on a basketball team to be this competitive on that bench?
Do you mean just go into some of the role players more? Or,
Yeah, just like who's like again not who you would think of as like a starter, like maybe like an Eddie House or
right,
someone else.
So just to give even more flavor to this stew of personalities, that Glenn Rivers, I'm not calling him that. I'm not calling him Doc. He's not Doc. The NBA has like 3 Docs that are more Doc worthy than Doc Rivers. Anyways. Glenn Davis, you mentioned, or maybe you didn't, but he first comes to mind. He is the most reliable guy in the playoffs outside of the core 6.
Okay.
Eddie House, who was just there to shoot threes, really, more than anything else. He provided some spacing that the team desperately needed in lieu of Ray Allen sitting out. Tony Allen was on this team. He started as a Celtic. This was like his 6th year as a Celtic. The fan base had a love-hate relationship with him because he was so sporadic. This was a roster that needed him for, and I quote, scoring punch. Yes, they needed Tony Allen for scoring punch. We get down the list even further. There's a good amount of Michael Finley minutes. He went on to produce The Birth of a Nation. No, not that one. A different Birth of a Nation. And then lastly, I do want to mention Nate Robinson, who was acquired in the middle of the season, who is said by bloggers to be a sideshow, garbage minutes guy. And then young Sheldon Williams, 6'9", 250 pounds. Maybe we can put him on LeBron. They didn't put him on LeBron.
So we have an idea of who's on this team.
Yeah.
Do you happen to have this in starting from the 09-10 season in a chronological order of events so we could see the chaos in real time, or do you just kind of have it like as all of these players have little stories to the table as we get to a run that eventually ends into a Game 7 finals?
I have the general narrative of the season down pretty well, but in terms of individual events, excuse me, I don't know what the hell I just said. They'll just be peppered in as we go forward. To start, everybody's healthy. Garnett's looking good. They start off 20-4.
Mm-hmm.
This is really exciting stuff.
Yeah.
They look well on their way to the second championship. They just need to stay healthy.
Was there any, as 2010 was happening for, I guess, 24, this is going into December.
Yeah.
Were people thinking, LeBron is probably already locked up his second MVP in December?
Yes. The Cavs were also keeping pretty good pace. They ended up, I think, with either the best or they were the 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. That was the kind of the last year Shaq was in any way scary as a player.
Mm.
He actually did some damage on that Cavs team. Yes, LeBron was the prohibitive favorite to win the MVP it was no secret that LeBron was going to be the MVP that year.
But in terms of title contenders going into the season, it's like, what can LeBron do? And then were people even then thinking like it's like Boston Lakers, or was it pretty open for 2010?
People were open to the idea of LeBron winning a title. He was so clearly the best player in the world, and it seemed like they had finally worked into a roster that could benefit from his strengths in a way that 07 team that made the finals that was an insane carry job.
Yeah.
Looking to the West,
I know had, Nash and Stoudemire finally healthy together. Dirk was still, this is right before Dirk had a run, so I'm sure him and Jason Terry and Jason Kidd were formidable opponents. I think the Spurs had, Manu injured at the start of the year, but I think otherwise, they're the Spurs during this time.
Yeah, you cannot count out the Spurs. There was a lot of parity in the West. The West just beat up on each other as they so often do. Guess how many teams had 50 wins in the West?
7.
8.
Wow.
That doesn't happen ever.
No.
I don't know how many times that happened. I would guess that's the only time that happened.
Yeah.
There have been times where, the 9th seed has, 48 something wins or whatever, but that's because there's like 2 teams with 49 wins above them, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So looking at this, it feels like the Spurs only won 50 games. They slipped down due to tiebreakers to the 7th seed, but that Spurs Mavericks round 1, I don't have a good memory of that. But to me, it feels like the Lakers, Mavs, Suns, and Spurs all felt like title contenders that year.
Mhm.
I would say, just because they had like MVP level players, and the Spurs were the Spurs.
Yeah.
So given those 4, the fact that the Magic had a lot of continuity and just made the finals, maybe their shooting goes up in the playoffs next year when they get to the end. I would list them as a contender. So all that said, the Miami Heat, you could be convinced. I mean, Wade was a top 3-ish player around then. You can always debate that. There are like something like 7 or so title contenders that year, but the top 2 were probably the Cavs and the Lakers.
Okay. Yeah, I do remember a bunch of the Muppet commercials this year of the Kobe and LeBron stuff.
Great ad campaign.
LeBron, have you seen my 3 championship rings? Because I seem to have misplaced my 3 championship rings.
Kobe, I'm busy.
And they represent the 3 championships that I myself have won.
This is my problem.
Now, somewhere in this area, I seem to have misplaced my 3 championship
Kobe,
rings.
play a game.
Have you seen
Kobe?
them? I did say there were 3 of them, didn't I?
So they go 20-4. Then there's just a lot of inconsistency. Here's where the injuries start to pile up. You have stretches of games where Pierce and Garnett are both out.
Mm-hmm.
So now Ray Allen has a lot of scoring duties, which maybe he enjoyed, but certainly it wasn't good for the team. I want to highlight this stat that I found. So Basketball Reference has this kind of all-encompassing stat for individual games called Game Score that just looks at, I think, the box score. It doesn't look at plus minus or anything like that. And in the finals MVP Kobe Bryant had an 18.7 game score on average.
Okay.
5 different Celtics at 5 different times had 5 game runs with a higher game score average than Kobe in the finals.
I imagine it's the core 4, and then is it Sheed?
Yeah. This team did a really good job of picking each other up, showing up when they're most needed. Guys like Tony Allen and Eddie House, it felt like when things were slipping, they would have a 2-game stretch where they shoot 60% from 3. It was really a testament to their heart, their will. They're old, but they're so hungry still. That team had a really good culture, despite all of the craziness that was surrounding it.
Would you say if you were to do like a credit pie chart, most of that is leadership of Kevin Garnett, or just as a collective, all these guys bought in?
At the time, Glenn was getting the vast majority of the credit for this.
Glue guy, but also like locker room style leader.
Rivers.
Keep it up, Mac. Keep it up.
Glenn Rivers.
Okay.
Baby Davis was a lovable guy and definitely made the most of his minutes off the bench as like the 7th man. But no, I'd say Doc. I'll just say Doc.
Hey, great work, Mac.
Since I've realized there are 2 Glens on this team.
Or you say Rivers.
Rivers, yeah. Coach Rivers, for kind of managing these. That's what he's always kind of been maybe great at. His whole career is people buy into him.
Mm-hmm.
His ball knowing stat is low, but his dude knowing stat is high. I will give him that. And then, Garnett, and then also Pierce as like this just consistent force that like kind of represented the Celtics. Like he's been the franchise guy for so long. People can rally around him. Obviously, Garnett brought a different level of energy, but I do want to give some of the pie to Pierce, and then also Rondo maturing. Rondo was a pretty immature player for this whole stretch of his career leading up to this season, but it seemed like Rondo also rounded into somebody who could be a real leader on the team. Really, it is those 4 guys. I don't want to short shrift Ray Allen, but just Ray Allen, rather than being a leader or being vocal, just was willing to accept his role on the court, even if off the court he was, being a bit of a shit stirrer.
Oh, he was stirring. Okay.
With the front office, certainly.
Oh, okay. Because I know, because when we see like, we see this a lot with the LeBron teams, that a third guy has to, take on less and just become more efficient, like with the Chris Bosh and Kevin Love type.
Yeah, or D'Angelo Russell on this most recent Lakers iteration. But they're still top 3 in the East. They just, like I said, they're picking each other up. Around January,
okay,
the injuries are really just nagging. They're playing games, but they just look off. This is where the articles come in, like, we need Tony Allen to give us 15 a game. We need Eddie House to play better. When you're a championship contender and your bloggers are saying stuff like, we need Eddie House to play better, you have a problem.
Yeah.
You shouldn't need Eddie House to play any better than whatever Eddie House does on any given House day.
The 8th and 9th man need to step up to win a championship.
Yeah. Well, I think, to their credit, these writers, they're just thinking about how home court advantage feels real for this team.
Yeah.
You will end up seeing that in these playoffs, particularly against Cleveland and Miami. I believe they go 3-1 in the Garden in both those series.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe, I forget exactly how it worked out with the Heat, but I know they would go 3-1 against the Cavs. No, they don't play 4 games. So it's 3-1 at home against the Heat, and then they take care of business at home against the Cavs, I believe. To close out the season, like the last 4 months of the season, 3 months of the season, they play 500 ball. They lose as many games as they win. They're sputtering. It's like Gary getting shouted out by Coach SpongeBob, just blowing gaskets, eyes deflating.
Gary, are you listening to me? Get the anchors out of your pants right now! Don't give me that look! I said now, mister! Get going, Gary! Go, 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 go!
But there's this talk. And this might be one of the first instances of this. This is talked about a lot with LeBron now. But because this team had won the championship and they were so old, the switch.
Mm-hmm.
Can they flip the switch come playoff time?
Also, like the third quarter Warriors in their prime run.
Yes. Yeah. But that was more just about like individual games.
Right.
This was
playoff
delineating
time.
the difference between playoffs and the regular season. All we talk about now, it seems, is how little the regular season matters.
Yeah.
This was one of the first teams to recognize that. They didn't need to win every game.
Mm-hmm.
They could take some time off. And that's why I brought up that crazy 5-game score. It's just that Danny Ainge and Doc Rivers were really managing their players specifically to make sure that they were maximized come playoff time. And that wasn't as traditional an idea back then. It was win as many games as you could so that you have home court throughout the playoffs, and injuries are random more or less. And I still kind of believe to a certain extent that injuries are just a bit random. I don't super believe in fragile players. Guys like Porzingis, like the Unicorns, makes more sense, but just a random wing who got hurt like 3 separate times, that's just bad luck.
Yeah.
So I want to stress that the switch and resting up for the playoffs, there was the whole coach's decision, did not play, tummy ache, controversy with Kawhi.
Yeah.
These ideas were, in part, I don't want to give them all the credit, but kind of in part popularized by this particular Celtics team.
I think there are some people who would also point to, which again, this might be a more slow, gradual, accurate origin point, but also I think going back to the 2014 Spurs, there was a lot of Pop resting Duncan to not play like back-to-back road games and stuff like that.
Yeah, and again, we seem to be drawing some parallels today between the 2010 Celtics and the 2014 Spurs. They have a lot of similarities, and they're just sort of this yin and yang. 14 Spurs win the chip.
And also 2010 Celtics being a much louder team.
Yeah, their version of brash Rondo is solemn Kawhi. That's their young star who I don't think there's any doubt that if the Celtics win the finals, Rondo would have been the finals MVP. Looking just at the sentiment at the time, from what I could tell. I tried to focus a lot of my research because we were leading in with these current Celtics and sort of the media discourse surrounding them. I've read a good amount of Celtics blogs. Just want to make sure that I'm not missing anything as we get ready to go into the playoffs. How are we doing on time?
We are at, I believe, the 30-minute mark. Yeah, 35 minutes.
Okay.
I mean, you might have more. We might skip over this, but you happen to know offhand if just the core four were named All-Stars that year, or if because of injury, some people missed out? If not, I could fill that in.
I want to say that certainly not all of the core four made it.
This is actually Rondo's first All-Star year.
That does not surprise me. Did Pierce make it? I feel like Pierce made it.
Allen did not.
Yeah, that makes sense. Pierce did. KG, did he have enough play time?
That's what I'm looking at right now.
He did.
Yeah, so no Allen.
But at this point, KG and Paul Pierce, an All-Star appearance was all they were good for. And if I went back and I looked at the snubs, I could probably think of maybe two guys who could sub in for KG and Paul Pierce in terms of what they were doing on the court that year by February. That would have an argument because they weren't even sniffing an All-NBA team. KG again was banged up throughout this year. He managed to play 69 games, but again, limited minutes, tactical rests, things like that.
All right, let's head now to the playoffs.
Okay. An important quote here from Coach Rivers that I think kind of encapsulated the sort of health or bust, like, hey, I don't know what's going to happen, but I like our chances. He says, when he's asked if, they're ready for the playoffs, he says, we're ready, and then I think we're ready. I mean, we have to be. It's not like we can say, can you hold up for a week and let us get ready? So I think we'll be ready. I don't know. That doesn't inspire so much confidence.
No.
To me.
Definitely, just seems... It's almost like a thing of, we're going into this hurt is what this translates as. So, hopefully they play up for it. But, I'm kind of planting the seed now of narrative, we are hurt, by the way. And old guys, take longer to come back from being hurt.
It was just this hope that, we're healthy now. We're pretty healthy right now. They went into the playoffs healthy.
Yeah.
Just we don't know if we're going to hold up. The first series is against the Dwayne Wade Heat the year before LeBron takes his talents to South Beach.
And I think that's one of the reasons why I look at myself as one of the greatest players.
It went, I want to say, 4-1 Celtics, with Miami taking a game in the Garden.
The Heat got game. They didn't get swept. It was a gentleman's sweep. 3-0 into 3-1 into 4-1.
With Boston protecting home court the whole series.
Okay. Yes. Great. I mean, look at how they were taking care of business in this series. Obviously, the starters' points are going to be a little bit elevated because their minutes are going to be elevated, and they were they won these games by 9 points, 29 points, 2 points, close game 3, and then the last game by 10. So 3 not very close games, 1 blowout, and then they took care of business in a close game 3. But Paul Pierce with 19.5, Ray Allen with 19.5, Garnett with 15, Rondo with 15.
And to my knowledge, Dwayne Wade had a good series. He's just Dwayne Wade's not the type of guy, even if you want to make the argument that he was top 3, top 5 at the time, to beat a whole team like the Celtics.
Wade had a fantastic series. Wade played amazing this series.
Yeah.
50 from the field, 56 from the field, 40 from 3, 33, 5.5, and 7 a game with with 3 stocks. Like, he was a monster in this series, but his second best player is like Mario Chalmers. So this I think confirmed what a lot of people were suspecting going into this, that they were going to flip a switch. It felt like if there was a switch, it was flipped.
Yeah.
Following this series, and now we get into a pretty awesome series in the semis against the Cavs. So they're the 4 seed, right? They had home field advantage against the 5th seed Miami Heat. Wade dragged that team to a 5th seed. That meant a date with LeBron.
LeBron being the 1 seed this year.
Yeah, LeBron was the 1 seed this year. LeBron was the overall 1 seed. It was confirmed he had he was the only team in the league to win 60.
Okay. A lot of people, as you were looking at something, after this series, we had Cavs ownership thinking LeBron quit during this series, which I think is crazy.
He had 27 and 19 in the Game 6 closeout.
Yeah.
I mean, whatever. Like, maybe he quiet quit, but it didn't look like it. This was a series where it kind of felt like, oh, wait, is this Rondo's team now? That was some of the coverage.
Well, also I think this series, I know this is a 2010 Celtics type of perspective, but I think there was a lot of the Delonte West and LeBron stuff was, I think, the rumors at the time.
Yeah.
That weird narrative.
Yeah, and then Delonte actually ends up on the Celtics next year, but can't stay on the court because he's crazy. But yeah, well, it was funny. I was reading one article and they were like, basically, the only thing that scares me besides LeBron is weird shooting heat from Mo Williams and Delonte West. I like our big guys' chances against Shaq. Like, Perk is a great matchup for Shaq, actually, at this point in Shaq's career.
Mm-hmm.
Fully healthy Perk, which is a funny thing to say, but Perk could kind of move a little, like, for them. More than KG could, even at times.
Mm-hmm.
And so Sheed was dealing with back spasms at this time. He only played... He was no longer in the 6th-man role. That was now occupied by Tony Allen, actually. And so let me read you Rajon Rondo's stat line for this series. It's something that's really impressive. 54 from the field, 33 from 3, but only on 9 attempts. He was never thought of as a shooter, again, like I mentioned earlier. 21 points, 6 rebounds, 12 assists, 2 steals. That's like Chris Paul-esque.
Yeah.
And he played 42 minutes a game.
Yeah.
In a very physical series.
Yeah, I could definitely see, as you mentioned, turning the leaf in the maturity level, but also kind of a, on the court at least, leader in the, if you're just looking at box score stuff.
Yeah. Pierce and LeBron obviously have a lot of history. There's that iconic matchup between them where Pierce, I think, has 50.
Mm-hmm.
And LeBron has like a 45-point triple-double.
Yeah.
But Rondo was barking at LeBron all series, talking that good shit.
Yeah.
And they took it down in 6, and now it's like, oh, okay, it's on.
Now we're looking at, probably a lot of big media guys and TV deal stuff of like Boston, LA. LA.
Boston's already like, we want LA, we want to beat the best. We just beat the best in our conference. Give us the best in your conference. There was definitely some look ahead going into this matchup with the Magic,
who again beat them last year to get to the finals. But again, that was you could say without KG.
Dwight feasting on a KG-less I forget who was even the other big besides Perk, like Leon Powell or something.
Maybe, yeah.
Who would be playing for them? That like, you know, because they didn't have Sheed either at that point in time. Okay.
Might have been Big Baby.
Yeah. This is an interesting series because the Celtics won it in the third game. They went up 3-0.
Ah, I see.
It was 2 very close games and then a blowout too. So it's like, that was a good chance. That was a good chance for the Magic at home. They ripped their soul out in the first 3 games.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of over before it started. They were so ready for the Lakers. They just punched them in the mouth.
Sorry, I'm looking over at his screen and I see for Game 3, in the blowout win, Glenn Davis has 17 to lead the Celtics. So I wonder just again how much.
Let's dive into that.
On what level were the Celtics operating on as a whole unit to distribute so much to have a blowout victory where Glenn Davis leads with 17?
This is a really great point to talk about something that we haven't talked about yet. Just how good this defense was this year for this team. This team's entire identity was built around their defense. Help defense off the charts. Nobody throwing their fellow man under the bus. Everybody hustling. There was so much buy-in that you need to run that kind of scheme from a team this old, and they got it. And it really showed itself in the playoffs. They were just smothering at times. 94-71 is the final in the Game 3 after they won 2 on the road by a total of, I think, 2 and 4.
Yeah.
And so the Magic already felt defeated. Like, how are you going to get up for this game on the road down 2-0? And they couldn't. Mm-hmm. And the Celtics ripped their throat out. The Celtics had 6 players in double figures. They won the rebound battle against a team that featured prime Dwight. That doesn't happen too often.
Yeah, I was wondering, now that KG's back, and maybe not, again, always that KG was directly on him, and we had closest thing we're going to call Perk in his prime. What are the, shot attempts and shot numbers like for Dwight this series, who, at the time, I think won Defensive Player of the Year and was, I think ended up being second in MVP voting to LeBron this year. Not that LeBron had any chance of losing it.
He was 4th in MVP voting, but he was in the middle of winning 3 Defensive Player of the Years in a row. KD and Kobe were ahead of him in MVP voting.
That's fair.
We don't need to. We can talk about Kobe some other time. I would have voted, I think, Dwight and Howard ahead of Kobe as well, but whatever.
Durant and Howard.
Scoreboard. Finals. No, I mean Durant, Wade, Howard, LeBron. I would have Kobe 5th, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, it's okay. Yeah. it's just you said Dwight and Howard.
Yeah, so I misspoke. Okay. That's for sure. I certainly misspoke. But anyways, yes. And then next year he would be second overall in MVP voting in the year where it was just LeBron had people hated him. Just people hated LeBron for going to Miami for the super team thing, which as we all know now is very stupid. Yeah, Dwight's stats in this series. Typical Dwight really just he had a bad game 3. He was 22-11 with a steal and 3 blocks. Shot 57% from the field. I want to say that's consistent with what he was doing. His scoring went up, which makes sense. Rebounding went down. And the field goal percentage actually went down. He led the league in field goal percentage. So they were bothering him. They were banging it. Pause. He wasn't as efficient, and he wasn't grabbing as many, I want to say probably defensive rebounds in particular. So that was the effect that maybe the combination of Perk and KG. Because KG was really a kind of a roamer. He was definitely still the best defensive player on that team by easily. And they used him with Perk as kind of the mass in the middle, and allowed KG to use his his spidey senses
and leading team defense with communication. And,
And Rondo helped a lot with on the communicate. He would call out plays. He had that kind of LeBron quirk to him where he watched a ton of film. He was really into knowing what the other team wanted to do. And so KG and Rondo were weirdly this fun kind of match made in heaven dynamic duo that would make you want to cry a lot. And then you have... it's a really well-constructed roster for the era. It's a testament to these guys that I do want to make it clear. At some point in the season, everybody complained about the team.
Yeah,
everybody was complaining the whole season.
Yeah, now that they passed Dwight, before we get into the finals, is there any other like little stories worth noting of just like how insane some stuff got in terms of like, I'm not saying this happened, like in terms of like there was a car crash or whatever, just the type of story.
So we've alluded to some stuff. It was when I looked at this roster and it jumped out to me, it wasn't so much about what I thought went on during the season, but what we know about these players now. What was in these players, the kind of personalities that these players must have had that since removed from this year have shown up. Rondo and Garnett we've talked about enough. Paul Pierce, I mean, the live streams. The Henny.
Yeah.
That's a guy who really likes to party.
Okay, so clarifying for me and maybe for audience, it's not so much this story had a bunch of disasters leading to a miraculous finals. It's these are the type of guys making up this team.
It's a testament to them that for this year they could lock in this hard.
Knowing who they are.
When in them they have some really dubious qualities. Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Thank you for the clarification. That's a good way of framing it. It's not like this was... it wasn't on the level of like The Last Dance with Dennis Rodman going on.
Right.
It's more so that they white-knuckled it and didn't allow the worst parts of themselves to manifest for the sake of the team.
Yeah, the only thing going on during the season, besides, as you mentioned, the couple of articles coming out for losing because of mainly injuries, it's more so, again, as you said, these type of personalities buying in is fascinating.
Yeah, definitely. And and then there was a recent, in this year, there was a Rasheed Wallace podcast that I want to talk about once we're finished talking about the finals. Kendrick Perkins.
We judge MVP year to year.
It was just a strange thing. It was just a strange.
But why did you cut it off at 1990 though? Because that was convenient. That was convenient.
I'm just saying. Hold on, time out. It was just a strange thing that it just happened.
A bozo among bozos.
Yeah.
But he filled his role perfectly on this team, and we're going to get to it, but he was very much missed.
But due to the back spasms at some point, keep him away.
Oh, that was Sheed.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Perkins.
Perkins filled his role really well and was sorely missed when it came down to it. We have the Ray Allen tweet. Google it.
Yeah. Maybe I put that up in the box.
Now, okay, I will say Rasheed and Perk racked up a lot of technicals this year. There was a technical watch. There were a lot of fines. I think both of them got suspended at one point for a game. Rasheed, it goes without saying what he brings to a team, and you take one thing that was very consistent in the articles that I read about basically everybody but the core four is you take the good with the bad.
Mm-hmm.
You have to take the good with the bad. You have to understand that it's an alchemy. It's not a science. It's just really, really special what this team was able to do this year, because there was so much that could go wrong, and they were so close. We haven't mentioned this guy, and it sucks, but he's just not very interesting. He's very quiet. His face never changed. He was kind of like Kawhi before Kawhi. His name's Marquise Daniels. There was some rumors of gang affiliation, which he vehemently denied, and now he is a born-again Christian who I think works for the Auburn basketball program. But yeah, 7th in minutes because of the injuries. Just kind of a what I might call a D and D wing, not a 3 and D wing. Glenn Davis, the pornographer / is currently in prison guy.
Yeah.
Who is always a bit of a weirdo, but a very fun player. Eddie House. This is more of an on the court thing. Eddie House is actually pretty normal off the court. He does broadcasting now for the Celtics with Scalabrine. Seems by all accounts to be like a nice, cool dude, but would pick a lot of fights on the court. Got really into it. Was kind of doing a little bit of a Pat Bev action for this team. Was again they're kind of dog they kept on the chain, because you let him off the chain, he's going to get eaten by a bear. Tony Allen, I just have in parentheses psycho.
Yeah. So with all of that,
yeah.
Now let's get into what seemed to be like the story's going up to, like, and they clutch out in Game 7, but that's not how this ends. Why is that? What goes wrong in the finals against the damn Los Angeles Lakers?
A lot of stuff actually goes wrong, but it's at the end of the day, it's a 7-game series, and Game 7 is a nail biter.
I for a quick thing about us, Grink is my older brother, if you couldn't tell based on how we talk, and we had a VHS of Game 7 of this finals that I just remember anytime watching it, just at halftime, I don't know what was going to happen.
Here's one thing that went wrong. In Game 7, so really this is about Game 7. It's not so much about the series. The series was actually 6 blowouts, and then Game 7. The teams just were kind of beating each other up really bad, and it wasn't even about home or away. It was just one day one team had it, and they were very evenly matched, but it kind of manifested itself in a way where it almost felt as if, like, hey, okay, we'll get them next time. If they weren't tight by the third quarter, it wasn't worth it. These teams were actually both kind of either so old in the case of the Celtics or so lacking in depth in the case of the Lakers that it felt like they were, as they had both done all year, were conserving energy. It felt like they both teams knew it was going to come down to a Game 7, and then they were going to leave it all out on the court, which they completely did. Here's one thing that went wrong. In Game 7, the Celtics shot 17 free throws, and the Lakers shot 38 free throws.
That's not good in terms of the math that you want to be on.
You don't want that if you're a Celtics fan.
And, it ties again to modern day Lakers, as I think they shot in the last 5 seasons 300 to 700 more free throws than the second place team.
Yeah.
That's one thing to keep in mind as a basketball, if you want to be a fan of the NBA.
The Lakers will take more free throws than you. It doesn't matter what time it is, what year it is, who's on the team. The Lakers will take more free throws than you.
Yeah, it was the case in the era of 2000s, 2010, 2020.
I don't know what the data is on the Magic and Kareem's Lakers, but it feels like they maybe didn't just because of their style of play.
Right.
I wouldn't be able to tell you for sure, though. Here's another thing that went wrong. They didn't have Kendrick Perkins, which I know, he's a meme now. It sounds crazy to say, but they also got out-rebounded 53-40, and some of these rebounds were absolutely brutal, heartbreaking, especially in the third quarter. Kobe has a quote. He says that this is his favorite game he's ever played. He played like dog shit, though. And he said that, hey, when you're down 15 in the fourth quarter, that's when a lot of teams crack. They were down 4 in the fourth quarter at most. A little bit of a dramatization. Granted, they were actually down 13 with about 9 minutes left in the third.
Okay.
And then they went on this very slow, grindy run. Again, keep in mind, the final score was 83-79. That, even for the era, is quite low. This was a brick fest. Teams shot 36% from the field. The Lakers shot 32% from the field and they won. So many free throws. The Celtics defense executed every game plan perfectly. They hard countered Kobe. And down the stretch, there were a couple execution errors. I recommend the end of that game is up on YouTube. It sucks, but when I think about this game, you can talk about the narratives. They finally ran out of gas. This team that had been suppressing so much of their emotion and sacrificing themselves for the team and pushing their bodies past their limit in this Game 7 where they absolutely had to have it, there was not enough left in the tank. But I think that's being a slave to the narrative. And I think that if we lived in a universe where the Lakers didn't take 1 billion free throws every game, and a universe where Kendrick Perkins was healthy, yes, that Kendrick Perkins was healthy, I think KG lifts his second title.
Anything's possible.
Anything's possible. That's my stance in terms of his all-time ranking if he got this done.
Right.
Man, is anyone gonna say that just like, I mean, that's like Laker fans, but whatever. Just give Powell the credit for this Game 7, or again, just it's like. And which I think might play into what happens this year if, say, like, heaven forbid, there's... Again, we saw injuries all throughout this run for the Celtics, but say another big one happens this finals. Can we just break every series down to we're just one injury away? Our team's programmed to win in these tough situations like it felt like this 2010 Celtics were? Or do we just always... Are the playoffs just so hard?
I think all those things are true. I think they can all be true. I think that there are always going to be injuries, but it is both... And so therefore, it is both necessary to think about them, especially when we think about how rosters are constructed, but it's also necessary to recognize that you can only ever beat who's in front of you. And no matter what the path is, it is hard. That's why only one team wins. It is so hard to win a title in the NBA. And kudos to the Lakers. I mean, sure, Kobe had a bad Game 7, but he was still, I think, their best player, slightly above Powell throughout the series. And I think he earned this Finals MVP. Let's not forget the performance that Meta World Peace had. He had 20 that game. He hit that 3.
Yes.
Nobody will forget that 3. But having 20 in a game where your team can only muster 83, as a guy who really wasn't used for his scoring, kudos to Meta World Peace. So an underrated individual game performance in the game's history for sure. We think about the 3, but he shot 39% this game. That's really good.
Yeah.
I just have a couple things to wrap this up, if you don't mind going over a little bit.
Sure.
I found this blog called LOSCY. I don't know how that's pronounced, but we talk a lot about Celtics fans. Here's a kind of Bill Simmons Jr. reflection on this Celtics team that I want to read from real quick, and it's specifically about Game 7. I defaulted to doing what I hate doing, romanticizing about how this game was going to end before it was even over. With still almost 20 minutes left to play, just under half the game, I was thinking about how poetically just it would be for Kobe Bryant to win the NBA Finals MVP while the Celtics hoisted up the Larry O'Brien trophy. Kobe could then join Jerry West as the only other Finals MVP that was not on the winning team. How fitting would it be that one of the most self-indulgent and selfish players to ever play the game be marked as the single best player in a series but fall on the losing end of things? and that the only two people to be in this company would be the former GM of the Lakers that drafted his high school hotshot and years later would proclaim him as the best shooting guard of all time, better than the logo himself, better than the cold-blooded assassin in a Bulls uniform, and finally that Kobe could join Jerry West in saying, "I could never beat the Celtics in the finals." That's a beautiful look into the psychology of a Celtics fan, how Celtics maybe felt about this series themselves. Not about the Celtics, not thinking about glory for KG or where Paul Pierce now could stand in the pantheon of all great threes. It was about Kobe, and Kobe beat them.
Yes, that is a beautiful way to like understand the minds of. I think it's more loud when we see it in Boston, Dallas, or Laker fans, but that's just great like fandom psychology. All right, well, thank you for sharing this story. 2010 Celtics, fascinating group of players, fascinating run. Thank you for starting this series of PinDown, and I'm sure we'll get you on for another one at some point in the future. Anything else you want to say? Final words?
No, just thanks for having me. Rasheed Wallace went on a podcast earlier this year and said that the real reason they didn't win is because the main three guys had beef. I don't know what that means, but Rasheed's always willing to talk some shit.
All right. See you on the next one.
When the light goes out and you can't go on, you'll miss your brothers, but now they're gone. When the light goes out, we go our own way. Nothing here but darkness, no reason to stay. Once we're brothers, brothers no more. We lost our connection after the war. There'll be no revival, there'll be no encore. Once we're brothers, brothers no more.